Sandrosius, look! This map says, those who seek the truth will find it at the bottom of the world, and the bottom begins under the Sphynx's paw.
What are we looking for, exactly?
The truth.
The truth in regards to what?
Well, I don't know. We have to get to the bottom of it.
Glendacles, we've already been digging for a week. Like, literally digging. And still haven't breached the mantle of this planet.
That was before we got the map, see? Did you hear that?
Huh. It's an actual cat.
Here, kitty kitty, can we ask you a question?
Quiet, mortals. How dare you address me as such? I am not a cat. I am a sphinx. Know the difference.
Are you the Sphynx mentioned here?
Yes, though I'm not going to help just anyone. You must answer my riddle first.
Corny.
I am unblemished and easily broken. Once broken, there is no restoration.
There are many potential answers.
Well, you only get one try. In 30 seconds. 29, 28, 27, 26, 25, 24,
I know.
23, 22.
An egg!
Promise! Sandrosius, usually these riddles mislead you with a literal interpretation, but really the answer is figurative.
Okay, but what if the Sphinx knew that we knew that, so he made the answer literal again?
Okay, but what if he knew that we knew that he knew? So, whoa, what's happening to him?
Do extraterrestrial cats have seizures?
An egg. Correct. Incorrect. It's a promise. Incorrect. It's an egg. A promise.
There's a huge crack on the ground.
Look, is that a giant turtle head over there?
My show! Someone cracked my show!
Hey, Top Turtle, settle down. Trying to get some sleep here.
So this is why we never made it past the mantle.
Well, if there's a turtle under this world and another turtle under that, what's under all these turtles?
Let's go find out.
Hi friends, welcome to Thonk, a philosophy podcast. We're your hosts,
Sandrosius?
and Glendacles. Thank you for listening, and you can find show notes in the description.
Today we're making our way down the world turtles to find the bottom. Come along with us. Oh hey, there's a ladder attached to the edge of his shell. Let's go down it. Also, something has been bothering me.
What is it?
Could there have been a correct interpretation of the Sphinx's riddle if it had to be only literal or metaphorical? The literal interpretation has an easier claim to true answers. Even if a few other literal objects fit the criteria in addition to egg, like mirror or fine china, each of these answers have a verifiable truth value. But this isn't the case with figurative answers to a figurative question. A promise more or less fits metaphorically something that is unblemished, easily broken, and irreparable once broken. But it also doesn't.
Yeah. I think what you're driving at here is the truth status of figurative language. Like with a physical object, there are clear procedures to determine the truth or falsity of a property ascription, like this is literally unblemished. But with something abstract like a promise, which bears a metaphorical property of being unblemished, there isn't really this procedure. I guess when we say an unblemished promise, one person could mean a promise that has not been broken, or it could mean a promise that places great faith on human nature, like unblemished as in unblemished by cynicism.
Okay, so if the meaning of figurative language is inexact, then it seems it's incapable of being true or false. It seems kind of alarming how much of our language hinges on metaphors and figurative language, and yet no one knows precisely what is meant, except maybe with established idioms.
Well, okay, maybe there's a view of figurative language that doesn't devolve into complete skepticism. I mean, figurative language is inexact, but that inexactness allows us to convey meaning in ways that literal language does not.
How so?
Okay, well, I'm gonna construct a rough account and then we can hash out the details later. So let's start with some basic definitions. The word hand is a name I give to the chicken claw-looking thing I have in front of me. The word hand is what we call a signifier. And this signifier represents and refers to my actual hand, which we'll call the signified. So to reiterate, signifiers are words, sounds, and symbols, and the signified is the meaning. You, the listener, yes, you, also have a signifier that represents you. Maybe you're called Jerome or Barbara or something. The signifier and signified pair together to make a sign. Ha! And we can think of language as a system of signs, a system of letters, sounds, images, the signifiers, paired with their meanings, the signified. Now, the signifiers we use must represent and refer to something, a thing, event, person, concept, etc., state of affairs, reality. Sure, you can have a nonsense strings of letters or sounds that don't represent or refer to anything, but these would be incomplete signs with no meaning. Then, I guess next we can distinguish literal from figurative language. We can say that in language, signifiers can have a literal or a metaphorical relation to the signified. So the signifier pen has a literal relation to its meaning, this writing utensil. Meanwhile, the signifier literary sword has a metaphorical relation to the same meaning.
I agree, but the signifier literary sword means much more than just a writing utensil. It might refer to the writing utensil in terms of picking out a physical object, but the scope of its meaning seems bigger.
True. Okay, wait. Maybe let me make a new distinction. There seems to be, a difference between the meaning of a signifier like pen and what the signifier refers to, the physical object. So pen means writing utensil, but refers to the physical writing utensil. So I guess within a sign, there's the signifier paired with its meaning, and then these signifiers have the objects or state of affairs that they're referring to, what we'll call their reference. So literal language directly refers to something, while with metaphorical language, we refer to one thing in terms of another.
So metaphor is to refer to X in terms of Y, while being literal is to refer to X in terms of X?
That's succinctly put. I think now is also the time to note that literal language is mostly denotative. So we can think of denotative meaning as a stable, agreed upon, publicly accessible kind of meaning. The signifier pen has a few stable denotative meanings that you can find in the dictionary. Then, I guess on the other hand, figurative language is mostly connotative. Connotative meanings are unstable, can vary between speakers and contexts, and aren't always publicly accessible. I could describe the same writing utensil as a literary sword, a weaver of worlds and ink, a wand that waves policy into action, while someone else, say maybe a murder mystery writer, might have a subjective connotation for pen, like murder weapon, and this is not a connotation that I would come up with.
That makes sense so far. But why have both the literal versus metaphorical distinction and the denotative versus connotative distinction?
Good question. I think, because literal language is mostly denotative, but not always. So I could describe my rug as reminiscent of Picasso. And while this is a literal description, it's also connotative. And then for the converse, not all metaphorical language is connotative. The idiom, killing two birds with one stone, is a metaphor that actually has an established denotation. So I guess the difference here is that literal versus metaphorical are two types of reference from language to reality, whereas denotation versus connotation are two different types of meaning. So I can refer to my rug literally by describing it as colorful and square, which is denotative, or by saying it's reminiscent of Picasso, which is connotative. I can also refer to my rug metaphorically as the star of the show in my living room, which is a denotative metaphor, or as the ballroom floor for conversational dancing, which would be a connotative metaphor.
Right. So there are literal versus metaphorical references and denotative versus connotative meanings.
Yes. Okay, so before we go on, I'm going to try to fit everything together with the schematic. Let's think of every signifier as having an atom of meanings. And we're sorry, this is not really how atoms work. So the nucleus of this atom is the denotation, and then swirling around this denotation are possible connotations, like a cloud of electrons. So the signifier pen has the denotation writing utensil. Swirling around this are the possible connotations like literature, authorship, studying, signing documents, ink, etc. Then this atom of meanings, the combined sign, refers to reality in either a literal or metaphorical way.
Okay, I follow you. So now when a sign refers to reality in a metaphorical way, how do we then determine its truth value?
I think there's two basic positions we can begin with. So the first is the position that there is such a thing as literal language that is either true or false in reference to reality. And then all metaphorical language, which expresses or conceives of the literal thing in terms of the metaphorical thing, can't really be true or false with reference to this reality. If this is the position that we take, we kind of have our work cut out for us in trying to rescue metaphors from nonsense or falsity status. We could simply call them arbitrary, but it's not enough to tell us how they relate to reality. The second is a position held by Nietzsche, that no language can be literal, if by literal we mean refer directly to reality. So, on Nietzsche's view, reality itself is expressionless and nameless, accessible to us only through our sense perceptions and mental constructs. It doesn't really emanate a truth for us to catch hold of. Reality is a silent and ineffable question mark. This means that all language refers metaphorically to reality. All language is already metaphorical. So, in essence, we're always trying to express the ineffable X in terms of a metaphorical Y. I express the ineffable chicken claw thing in front of my face in terms of a metaphorical signifier called hand, with its denotations and connotations. And because this ineffable reality is equally inaccessible to everyone, we're only ever conceiving and expressing through the human invention of language, plus public consensus on denotative meanings to give us some pretense of objectivity. If we take this position, let's call it nihilism about literal language. We don't necessarily need to rescue the truthfulness of metaphorical language, because there's no difference between literal and metaphorical reference. Then the only distinction that matters is between denotative and connotative meanings.
Okay, well, obviously on Nietzsche's view here, there's no need to vindicate the truthfulness of metaphorical language because he's dismantled the connection between language and reality. So what truth is there even left to vindicate?
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I think we can still work with his view if we take it as a base assumption. So let's assume at most basic level, there will never be a direct connection between language and reality. However, even if everything refers to the ineffable in a metaphorical way, there is still a difference between literal and metaphorical uses of language, even if it's a difference in degree. Let's say difference in degrees of directness. So the expression, I achieved two desired outcomes through one means, is more direct than killing two birds with one stone. A pale green is more direct than an ill-fated and anemic green. So, although on Nietzsche's view we've rejected the possibility of directly accessing reality in itself, it seems that in the realm of our perceptions, experiences, and expressions, there's still a pecking order to language. I'm going to call this the layers of metaphor model. So there's the ineffable X. And then we put this in terms of the sense impression of a thin cylinder with a ballpoint tip. And this is put in terms of pen. Let's call this a first order signifier. This has a denotative meaning which refers most directly to the object, and then connotative meanings like literature, writing, ink. These connotations then can be expressed through literary sword, a second order signifier, which relates less directly to the object. It's not as clear what the denotative meaning of literary sword is, but I'd say that this second order signifier is used mostly for its connotations, so the associated feelings, images, senses, contexts, valuations, rather than the denotative meaning. And then this layers of metaphor model can be applied to something that's very abstract and difficult to describe, such as time, where we see a metaphor, money, is brought in to shape it. So there's the ineffable X, that's put in terms of some intangible experience of change and passage. That's put in terms of time, a first order signifier. This denotation is kind of bare in connotations, a lot more than first order signifiers like pen. So because time is so bare of connotations, we kind of borrow the connotations from something else that's far richer with connotations, like money. So the metaphor time is money is not brought in to express time in terms of money, but it's rather brought in to shape time in terms of money. George Lakoff calls these conceptual metaphors. I'm going to call them shaping metaphors. So shaping metaphors structure our experience and understanding of reality in a much more fundamental way. There's time is money, that's one. Argument as war, happy is up, sad is down, and so on. They're employed not to create a separate second order signifier, but to furnish the first order signifiers denotation with any connotations at all. Okay, this is getting a bit complicated. So to simplify it, we can almost think of shaping metaphors as like a 1.5 order signifier, somewhere in between the fixed denotation of the first order signifier time and a second order signifier that we widely recognize to be metaphorical, like time is a mother.
Okay, I think I understand what you're trying to do here with the first, second, third, and so on signifiers, which, if I'm correct, are separated by how they relate to the ineffable reality.
Yeah.
Okay, so then this layers of metaphors thing is a pretty neat model, but why are first order signifiers more primary than second order ones if there's no reality for them to be in reference to? What does the pecking order of language answer to, if not some kind of reality that we're all able to access, perceive, and describe? So imagine I describe something as a pale green, and you describe it as a paper smudged with grass stains green. And since there's no reality that we share that could be the final arbiter on the accuracy or truth of our expressions, in what way is my pale green first order and your grass stains green second order? Like, it could be the case that immediately upon laying eyes on the color, grass stains green was just how you conceived it in your perception. There's no intermediary pale green conception. In fact, grass stains green captures both roughly the color you are perceiving and is loaded with your subjective associations with the color. So isn't this more accurate to your subjective reality? But then, if this line of questioning leads to the ultimate conclusion that the order of these layers of metaphor are in fact arbitrary, then haven't we sort of ended up right where we started? What really is the difference between more literal versus metaphorical expressions, and which lays a stronger claim on the truth? So far, we've organized the pecking order of language based on directness to ineffable reality, to more or less give some kind of answer to which has a stronger, and if not absolute, claim on the truth. But if no one can F the ineffable, language isn't directed anywhere. So degrees of directness don't really apply.
Yeah, I really see your point here. I guess the problem with taking Nietzsche's position and giving up on trying to articulate any shared reality is that the shared point of reference is also gone. I mean, is coffee color a second order signifier / metaphor that we've put dark brown, a first order signifier, in terms of? Well, in Taiwanese, coffee color, 咖啡色, is the literal denotative signifier for dark brown. So the sentence, this coffee color bag, in English would be like a second order description, while in Taiwanese it would be first order. And then in some hypothetical language, grass color could be the first order denotative signifier for what we in English call green. Then, okay, maybe I'm going to make a little cheap cheap move, okay, to save my account. So rather than literal language being truer and more direct to some reality compared to metaphorical language, it's just going to be truer to some denotation.
Okay. So rather than the end of the pecking order being the ineffable X, you're making it the denotation?
I guess so. My whole layers of metaphor model needs to be stabilized around something. So I guess reality remains ineffable and inarticulate, and so do our individual sense perceptions, which are all uniquely subjective. But there is then only the denotative meaning of a signifier that is stable and becomes the meaning that all subsequent signifiers refer to. All we have is the first order signifier time and its denotation. And, well, whatever's beyond that is a black hole that language cannot touch.
Wait, 1 second. By the way, which Cheryl are we on? We've been climbing down so long now that my arms hurt.
I think we're 13 from the top.
So many turtles. But going back to what you're saying, I think I get it, but dissolving everything into a black hole seems like a bit of a cop-out. Or maybe it feels like the Picasso rug has been pulled out from under me, leaving me floating in space. No reality, no ground to center myself on. It's a very scary thought. All things considered, though, I'm unsatisfied with our original account. Denotative meaning is really just a consensus by a bunch of people for what this thing is for functionality reasons. So it seems like the hierarchy between denotative and connotative meaning flatten out. But then what are we left with? Nothing. I think there is an arbiter on truth, a thing that stabilizes denotative meaning and inspires connotative meanings, which is the ineffable. We shouldn't give up on the ineffable and underestimate our ability to grasp it, because it's not that the ineffable is ineffable because it's subjective. Rather, it's because our language is inherently inadequate that these attempts at capturing the ineffable are subjective. There might be an ineffable experience that an author can skillfully convey to you, or a relatable meme that can accurately express an ineffable feeling so much so that it elicits a laugh from you. But really, it's that thing that's been by our side from the start, the thing that we've been dancing around with all these metaphors. I say we're all having a subjective experience of an objectively experientiable, so able to be experienced, reality.
Hold on. Objectively experientiable reality?
Right, okay, let me elaborate with an example. So, suppose that reality is a museum that we can walk through. Each human subject may have their utterly unique experience of the museum, a unique path that they walk, a unique sequence of sights, sounds, etc. But although they have an infinite number of subjective experiences, there is one museum that is objectively experientiable. So that museum constrains what is possible for them to experience. Here, the museum is our one shared ineffable reality. We can encapsulate this antithesis in an updated atomic model. So our original model had the denotative definition as our objective nucleus, with the connotations swirling around it. But we've seen how the denotation itself is subjective, or at least dependent on consensus. And in fact, this denotation is trying to express something further, our ineffable reality. So really, denotative and connotative meanings are at the same level of significance. Neither one supersedes the other in an attempt to express the ineffable reality. So I think it'd be more accurate to make the nucleus our objective ineffable reality. The electron cloud that swirls around our ineffable reality are the signifiers, so the literal words themselves that we've chosen to encapsulate this ineffable thing. The trace pattern that the electron creates.
Like when it goes shwoom, shwoom, and orbits the nucleus?
Yes, exactly. The shwoom, the trace, the orbit, is the denotative or connotative meaning that is illuminated by the signifier. The signifiers illuminate some aspect of ineffable reality. We are able to see this aspect through the illumination of the signifier, and also the signifier constrains what it is that we see about the ineffable. Going back to our museum example, let's say they had an artifact on display that was only illuminated every so often by moving light. I might see bits of the design, maybe the curve of a handle, but I can never fully grasp what the artifact is in front of me. And here we can pretend our signifier is the light and our ineffable the actual artifact. When you see through the signifier, it places the ineffable within a context that is only illuminated by the signifier. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. But wait, okay, there's something that doesn't seem right. Didn't we go off the assumption that we do grasp the ineffable, that we all have a raw, more direct experience of ineffable reality? It's just our direct experience that language is inadequate at fully capturing. This museum analogy makes it seem like language is the only way we interface with, so experience and understand, the ineffable. Maybe it'd be better to say that our raw experience of the artifact is fully lit and available to our senses. But the moment we try to describe that experience through language, the room goes dark, and the artifact is only illuminated by our signifiers, which attempt to capture something we know is there, present, and real. Here's an example of the asymmetry between language and our raw experience. So the raw experience of grief is insurmountable, so overwhelming and poignant, it evades language. Descriptors like sad, terrible, are inadequate. Raw grief is a tsunami, while grief, the sign, is like a droplet. These words almost obstruct the raw ineffable, but trying to translate into language. But double weight. You also said earlier that we're all having a subjective experience of an objectively experientiable reality. So to return to the museum analogy, we could say that different individuals can have an infinite number of unique experiences of the museum, but there's one museum out there to be experienced by them in these infinite number of subjective ways. And that means there are common features to all that it's possible to experience. So moving in 3 dimensions, the same artifacts, etc. That means then it's possible for 2 people to share the exact same experience, say walking past the same artifact at the same angle, and they can articulate what they see to each other. You once said that literal reality was painfully dull, and so you choose to see everything metaphorically. And I knew exactly what you meant by that. Marie Howe did as well, when she said, "To resist metaphor is difficult because you have to endure the thing by itself." So, it's like this sliver of ineffable reality that somehow the 3 of us all grasp.
Yes, okay. I agree with you. And maybe on top of having an objectively experientiable reality, we can have objectively ineffable experiences in the sense that we can have access to the same ineffable experience. This reminds me of Kant's approach to the relationship between the subject and reality. So for him, there are faculties of sensibility and understanding, so roughly like sense perception and intellectual understanding, that we as human beings share, and it allows us to form concepts, synthesize sense perceptions, and experience and understand the world. So in sharing these faculties, it is kind of inevitable that we will receive roughly the same sense perceptions and synthesize information in roughly the same way. And there might be an infinite number of unique experiences and understandings of the world, but these are still constrained by the faculties we all share. So I think what we make of these perceptions is where the subjectivity starts to seep in. You and I can feel what grief is like and overlap in these feelings physiologically, or even get the same sense of grief as a massive loss, right? Due to our similar faculties of cognition. But we might attribute different subjective feelings linking to what we think is most accurate to describe this ineffable feeling of grief.
Okay, well, while I see where Kant fits in here, I think we'd have to update our museum metaphor. Kant wouldn't say that there's an objectively experientiable museum, but that each subject has the same faculties which constrain their experience. He wouldn't say that we could know the museum or access the museum in itself directly.
Yeah, I think that is true. Okay, so let me try and reword this though, but I don't think we'll be able to open this can of worms for now. It is essentially the question of whether subjective experience conforms to a shared objective reality or whether it's the other way around. Do we all experience the same museum, or is it the mysterious museum experienced by our same faculties? Is it the sameness that makes subjective experience converge in reality or within us?
This might be a case where, yeah, we don't really need to sort that out to answer the present question. So long as we have some convergence of our subjective experiences, maybe ineffable reality is objectively experientiable, or maybe our raw experiences of that ineffable reality are structured with the same constraints. Either way, there's some stable nucleus, woo, for our signifiers to orbit.
And because we found some stable nucleus here, there is a corresponding truth value that language can have in reference to ineffable reality. And I think we can see this clearly in how some metaphors are more suited to the given situation than others. So if I say, "You are my diamond," to my lover to express how precious they are to me, instead of "You are my cubic zirconium," the former metaphor will more accurately hit the target of what I'm trying to express.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame them if they got offended by cubic zirconia. Okay, so to tie it all back to the main question then, language does answer to some ineffable reality. Both literal and figurative language reference this ineffable reality. They just do so in different ways. There's no pecking order of degrees of directness. They just illuminate different aspects of it.
Yes. And as to how they illuminate in different ways, we could say that literal language wants to illuminate the ineffable in an exact, nothing more, nothing less kind of way. And most of the time, to accomplish this aim, literal language uses denotative signifiers to shine on the artifact with a direct overhead light. It captures mostly everything, and pretty blandly at that. And oh look, it's an antique vase, and that's about it. Whereas figurative language, on the other hand, wants to illuminate the ineffable in a less exact case, but perhaps in a more interesting or revealing way. So to accomplish this, figurative language uses connotative signifiers to shine on the artifact in various ways. So, oh look, this antique vase has actually this really nice rainbow glint, or whoa, a wobbly shadow that it casts.
I guess then we can identify a few different kinds of metaphor. So there were the shaping metaphors earlier, which structure our experience of the ineffable because our raw experience of it is quite fuzzy. Within the museum, it's like an artifact that even with the lights turned on, we have a fuzzy, raw experience of. A mythical, shape-shifting antique vase that appears at the back of the museum like a dream-like phantasm. So we use shaping metaphors to kind of pin it down and give it shape. Then there are reductive metaphors, which boil the ineffable down to its essence. So say the ineffable I'm trying to capture is this pretty complex situation. A beloved politician, known for her innocence and benevolence, has her image ruined by one small misdeed. And I distill this into white clothes, when soiled, look filthier than black clothes. And then there are other metaphors that don't reduce, but rather expand the ineffable by evoking meanings from a greater context. So rather than saying to my lover, "You are beautiful to me," perhaps I say something like, "You are the moon to me," which evokes connotations from outside of this context that are attached to the moon as a symbol of luminosity, divinity, and grandness.
I like those distinctions. Reductive metaphors are kind of like backlights then, that produce a clear and distinct shadow of the artifact, distilling the ineffable down to its essence. And by contrast, expansive metaphors are like a colored light cast upon an artifact, where the light itself plays a part in expanding the feel or the aura of the artifact. It adds on to the experience of the artifact.
Hey guys.
Could we say that shaping metaphors are a type of expansive metaphors? It feels unbalanced in the amount that's added, or maybe it's neither nor?
Hey guys.
I think, shaping metaphors are in their own class. They shape the ineffable while the other two expand or reduce something that already has shape.
Hey guys.
What do you want?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. It's just, I was listening to you guys and following along, admittedly. And, personally, I think you guys are getting a bit pedantic. Plus, there's something weird going on with this conversation.
Something weird? What do you mean?
I mean, You guys have been making use of metaphors since the beginning. The whole museum thing is an extended metaphor, and so is the atomic thing. You've been using metaphors to explain how metaphors work, how they relate to reality, and judge whether they're true or not. Isn't there something weird about that?
Well, you're right, but unfortunately, what we're talking about are abstract relations between abstract concepts like signifier, metaphor, and the ineffable reality. So, the atom and museum are accessible and familiar contexts to put these abstract relations and concepts in terms of. We could try to describe them literally, I guess by only using philosophical terms, but I'd suspect that even the most literal description we could use would still rely on shaping metaphors.
Oh, God. It's metaphor upon metaphor. It's like each metaphor stands on the back of another. Speaking of backs, we've been climbing for a while now. Which turtle number are you?
Oh, I'm turtle number 39 from the top. From the bottom, I don't know. I've always wanted to know. It's kept me up at night. Say, what number turtle am I in the sequence?
It's okay. We'll check for you.
Oh, God. It's turtles?
All the way.
Thank you for being one of the very first listeners of this podcast. We really appreciate your support, and if you would like to leave feedback, we have a Google form. So see the link in the description down below.
I guess we never got to the bottom of it.
Has my entire life amounted to just being one turtle on an infinite stack? I thought it meant more than this.
Oh, there. Do you want to come with us? We're booking it out of here.
You know what? Yeah, I think I will come with you guys. Okay.
Ooh, that looks like a tight squeeze.
Yep, grab on tight. Whoa, okay. So, where do you guys want to go to next?
Wow, I didn't know turtles could swim through space.
Sandrosius and I have been invited to a dinner at G.E. Moore's Manor. It says, in red ink, hold on to your hands.
What does he mean by that?
I'm not really sure. But look at this guest list. They're all philosophers.
Red ink, 5 philosophers, 1 mansion. I have a funny feeling about this.
The Thonk podcast is produced, written, and edited by Glenda Fu and Sandra Xia. All reading materials are in the show notes on the Thonk Philosophy Podcast website. Until next time, friends. Bye!